Hi, I want to make a short video showing the details of the lab midterm. So let me share my screen real quick. All right, so here I am on my ESXi server. And the first thing I want to show is, first thing you gotta do is create the lab LAN. You want to do the virtual switch first, just like we did in a previous lab. So I created a new virtual switch, standard virtual switch, lab LAN, and then assign it to a port group, lab LAN as well. And then I created Win server midterm and Win 10 midterm. So I just copied the VMDK and the VMX file from the Win server parent, registered it. Same thing with the midterm, the Win 10 parent and the Win 10 VMX file. All right. So then once I had my machine set up, I went into the settings and made sure they're on the lab-LAN network for both Win 10 and Win server. The lab-LAN, that's what we want to see there. All right, then I went into the Win server and I did a couple things here that you need to do. First, on the local server, I made sure to change the name to WinServer-MT. And right, so that's the computer name here. And it's telling me be careful because it's a domain controller now. But so change that to WinServer-MT. And then I also went into the network and I named it lab-LAN. And then I set it to an IP address of 192.168.100.1. And it's a .1 because it said it has to be the first IP address. All right. And then it has a 255.255.255.0, which is a /24 network. Right. And then once that was done, I went and I installed let me see here, the role of Active Directory Domain Services, which also installs DNS automatically. Then I installed DHCP. So let's go look at Active Directory. And of course, before I did Active Directory, I went into the group policy for the default domain policy. I edited it and I went into computer policies, Windows settings, security policies, account policies, password policy, and I made sure that this password must meet complexity is disabled. And then of course I ran the gp update.exe from the command prompt. Once that was done, I could come into my Active Directory users and computers. And the first thing I did is I created the employees OU. So to do that, you just right click here, new organization unit, call it employees. Then I created the Bill account. And then I created the Steve account, right? So those are pretty standard. And I created the owner's security group. This is a global security group. And I made sure Bill and Steve are members of that group. Then what I did is I went into the users, and the administrator is disabled now, but before I disabled it, I just right click, copy, and put CNET all the way through. And then I went on to the CNET user and I moved it into the employees OU. Once I logged off and then logged back on as CNET, I came back into the users and disabled the administrator account. All right. So that's all there is to that. Now, the domain setup, the Promoto domain, everything was the same as we did in the previous lab. So the next thing I did is I came into the DHCP and I created a new scope for the DHCP, which I called lab-lan. I gave it the address pool of 150 to 200. And then I made sure that my router was set to 100.1, which is my IP address of this machine. DNS is set to 100.1, and the domain name is midterm.local. And then once that was done, I came into right-click here, authorize, and then right-click, all tasks, restart, and then everything came up green, which means it's working. All right. Then the last thing I did on this server is I came into the C drive and I created a share folder. Then I went into the properties of the sharing, and I added, now I logged off and logged on as CNET, which makes me the owner of this group, which is what I wanted to see. I didn't take off points if you did it as administrator, and then you made CNET full control, because it's really the same thing. But, and then I gave Bill read write and Steve read, and I shared that location. All right, so that's pretty much it on the server. Now, if I come into Windows 10, first thing I did here is I came into the properties. And of course, it has to be on the lab-lan domain. So let me show that first, or lab-lan network. So I came into the Ethernet and I changed the adapter settings. So it says lab-lan. Now this should be set to, and I'm logged on as Bill here. He's not an administrator. But you can see here, I left all of this obtain automatically, which is the default settings. So you should be okay there. All right. So that's the network side of things. And then in here, I came in, I changed the settings. And click here, change the name to win10-mt, and then the domain to midterm.local. Now, another thing I did is I came into a command prompt and I made sure after that was done that it says win10-mt. Otherwise, I took up points if you didn't say that. And then I also made sure it got the first available IP address for the DHCP scope, which is 150, which is right here. Okay. Once that was on the domain, I came into, I logged off and logged on, and I came to my server and I made sure I had the share folder, and then I just mapped it to the L drive, which I have already done on this one. And you want to make sure that all of your profiles, CNET, Bill, and Steve, have an L drive map. So if I came into your thing, I should see this. Now, Bill has read write, so he can create. CNET's owner, so he can do anything, but Steve's only read. So if I switch users here and come in as Steve, and go to the L drive. And if I want to change this, Bill and Steve, I'll get an error because he does not have write permissions, only read. But I can read this all day long. All right, so I believe that's everything from the lab midterm, from the creation of the VMs, the creation of the networking in VMware, then the setup of the workstations, the naming of the workstations, which is the NetBIOS name, and then the installation of Active Directory, domain services, and then DHCP, and then the creation of the user accounts, the creation of the group, the disabling of the administrator account, and then the mapping of the L drive on each of the stations, of course, adding win10 to the domain midterm.local. All right, so that's pretty much everything on that. And most of you did very well. There were a lot of scores in the 40s. And so, you know, that shows me that you're picking this up really well. Anyway, I'll talk to you on Thursday, and I'll see you later.